Leppenheim, the capital of the Antares Empire, is in flames because of an all-out war. Many dragon-like creatures are battling against the armed human soldiers. A golden-haired old man in shining armor cannot believe that their army of 2 million was defeated by the creatures they themselves summoned. A soldier reports that about 200,000 were killed and 300,000 were injured due to the enemy's overwhelming attacks and summoning spells. The golden-haired man, who is actually the king of the humans, declares that this is the end for the demon king who destroyed their kingdom and filled the world with corruption, because the true heroes will defeat him. Hearing this, the soldier praises his king's wisdom. In the Hall of Abyss, deep within the great demon palace at the heart of Garak City, the hero Alex von Hallion shouts that today all the crimes of the demon king will end. Many other heroes stand with Alex, declaring that it is time for the demon king Leppenhard to return to darkness. The one they call the demon king is in fact the emperor of the Antares Empire. Another bearded hero, Stellar Sword Cyrus, takes his stance and vows to destroy Leppenhard to end the so-called Dark Empire. Leppenhard sits calmly on his throne, remarking in annoyance that they insist on calling his empire dark when it already has a perfectly fine name, Antares, where the sun and moon rise like anywhere else. The king of Feast, Tezron, reveals his golden aura and insists that once the demon king is defeated, the demonic creatures will also lose their corrupted nature. But Leppenhard knows this is not the truth. The creatures have always lived the same way. He merely taught them human war tactics. Humans only call them corrupted because they can now fight on equal terms, which threatens human dominance. Leppenhard asks if all the warrior kings have fallen. Stellar proudly confirms he fought the mighty orc warrior Tacit, who did not stand a chance against his sword. Shocked by the news, Leppenhard mourns Tacit's death. Orcs may appear rough, but they are loyal and honorable beings who protect the weak. Tezron laughs, adding that even a troll has paid for its so-called sins. This shocks Leppenhard further when he learns that Guru Atilka has also been slain. Trolls may look intimidating, but they honor nature and seek harmony with the world. Leppenhard begins to weep, only to hear Saint Ellen, known for her gentle appearance, announce that the dwarf who worshipped another deity has also been set on the right path. In other words, he too has been killed. Leppenhard cannot believe that even Maiklin is dead, and he questions when the dwarven god Allport became known as a god of darkness. To him, it is clear that humans treat any deity outside their own main god, Sayer, and the 12 deities as evil. Then Jade Arclight, the light wizard, proudly demonstrates his magic while declaring that he has already sent a so-called dark elf to the afterlife. This enrages Leppenhard, who reveals his power and asks if all the heroes are so eager to die. Seeing his black aura, the heroes proclaim that the Demon King is finally revealing his true nature, which only fuels his anger further. Tezron insists that the Dark Elves are fallen creatures, undeserving of pity. Leppenhard covers his face in despair, shouting that Cirrus was never a Dark Elf. She only had slightly darker skin because humans destroyed the forests, forcing her people into wastelands where they were scorched by the sun. He asks how they could call a pure-blooded high elf a dark elf simply for having tan skin. The heroes, unmoved, charge forward. Alex shouts that defeating Leppenhard will bring peace to the souls of the fallen. Leppenhard's eyes darken as he realizes there is no point in speaking with them anymore. To these humans, they see them only as evil beings to be destroyed. As Alex prepares to strike, Leppenhard decides to embrace the role of Demon King that they have forced upon him. He unleashes his power, breaking the ground beneath the heroes, and through his tears reveals that he was once an archwizard, though hardly an ordinary one. For him, the tragedy is clear. Humans have never accepted other races as their equals. Elves are treated like beautiful servants with long lifespans. Dwarves are forced into labor as skilled diggers and craftsmen. Orcs are used as strong workers, and trolls are harvested for their healing abilities. All of these races had lost their pride and dignity, living as slaves. Leppenhard was shocked when he uncovered the hidden injustice buried within this forgotten culture. By living among them, he learned their way of life, and by combining the elves' elemental magic with the trolls' sorcery, he became the first person in history to wield the 10-circle magic. Through these exchanges, his values began to change. Unable to watch the suffering of the enslaved races any longer, he started rescuing them. But as his territory expanded to give them shelter, it became harder to stay hidden from humans. Eventually, humans sent armed knights to invade his lands. Although his people only defended themselves, their territory continued to grow, and the village expanded into what became the Antares Empire. All the races were overjoyed to finally have their own kingdom. Lepenhard never built the empire out of hatred for humans. He simply believed all intelligent beings were equal. He never sought revenge, yet the result was all-out war. Even when citizens praised the empire as a great place to live, humans dismissed it as nothing more than the evil magic of the Demon King. Lepenhard understood that perhaps having orcs and goblins as imperial guards seemed intimidating, but that was no excuse to harm innocent people. As ruler, he now saw it as his duty to protect his citizens. He abolished old laws that allowed cruelty toward other races and created new laws of equality. In the Great Battle, Lepenhard strikes Alex, sending him flying. He declares that Alex may have been skilled in both sword and magic, but he mastered neither, making him a jack of all trades, master of none. To Lepenhard, true specialists were the ones who survived. One by one, he defeats the heroes, except for the mighty Tezron, whose unmatched strength and endurance make him far more dangerous. Tezron charges at Lepenhard, breaking through the palace walls with sheer force. Lepenhard dodges, thinking that Tezron is a man who devoted his entire life to perfecting one skill. Bringing him down would not be easy. Tezron closes in again, smashing through stone as Lepenhard leaps onto a crumbling platform, only to be attacked once more. Lepenhard counters with magic, but Tezron's punch still lands. Striking his head, he taunts Tezron, claiming he blocked the strike with magic, but inside he knows his spine has been shattered. As Tezron steps forward to finish him, Lepenhard admits defeat, saying Tezron has won. Tezron replies that now the enslaved races will be freed from their so-called evil nature. Those words enrage Lepenhard. He realizes that to humans, other races will always be seen as slaves or corrupted beings, no matter how noble they truly are. His frustration boils over, and he reveals an ancient artifact known as the Eye of Time and Space, found deep within the ruins. Not even a 10-circle mage like himself had ever been able to unlock its secrets. Tezron shouts in alarm, demanding to know what he is planning. Lepenhard declares he will attempt a time and space spell, one capable of defying even the order of the gods. Though unsure if it will activate, he has nothing left to lose. As Tezron charges with lethal intent, Lepenhard focuses on unraveling the artifact's logic, challenging Tezron to stop him if he can. Just as Tezron closes in, a golden light erupts, surrounding them. The artifact glows brightly, and in an instant, everything changes. The scene shifts. Birds sing peacefully outside, and Lepenhard awakens in a small wooden house filled with warmth and comfort. He blinks in confusion, wondering why he is still alive. Sitting up on the bed, he recalls that he barely managed to decode the artifact's spell. He never expected it to activate so suddenly. Looking around, he realizes this place is unfamiliar. He must have leapt through time. Reaching up to touch his face, he notices it is no longer the same. He is no longer the Lepenhard of before. Lepenhard stands up, remarking that even the toughest man would break down in tears if they saw the size of his new body. He wonders whose body it could be, noticing the thick calluses, countless scars, and layers of muscle stacked on top of each other. With a hint of irony, he mutters that a wizard only needs to cast spells, so there is no point in having something as useless as six-pack abs. He recalls his younger years, when he was considered quite the charmer, and even in his older age, his sharp and distinguished looks won the admiration of many elves. But now, looking into the mirror, he taunts the unfamiliar, bland-looking face staring back at him. His once elegant features have been replaced with a rugged mess of bulging muscles. He questions what exactly happened during the spell and wonders if ending up in another person's body means the magic failed. Still, something about this new face feels strangely familiar. Lepenhard examines his reflection more closely. Thick brown eyebrows, fierce eyes, and a tightly shut mouth. He anticipates that if he grows larger and adds some facial hair, he would look exactly like the King of Fists, Tezron. Just as he realizes this, Someone outside curses at him, calling him Tezron. A large, bearded man enters the room, twice Tezron's size, and cheerfully tells him that the sun is already high and he should start the day with a smile. Nervous and intimidated, Lepenhard blurts out a question about the man's identity, secretly thinking he might be facing a monster. The old man eyes him with suspicion. For Tezron to look at him like a stranger is unusual. When Lepenhard insists that he truly doesn't know who he is, the old man scoffs, accusing him of using the memory loss excuse again. He warns that such an excuse won't work a second time. Without waiting, he grabs Lepenhard by the head and drags him toward the training grounds. Lepenhard quickly realizes this must be Tezron's teacher, the legendary king of fists, Gerard Chrome Proteus, the strongest fighter on the continent. The scene shifts to Lepenhard tied to a tree, terrified. He tries to reason with Gerard, but Gerard silences him, claiming he is talking far too much today. Gerard then brings out a bundle of bamboo sticks, preparing for training. Seeing this, Lepenhard grows even more anxious as Gerard begins the harsh routine. The blows sting, and Lepenhard cries out internally, trembling in pain and confusion. He even thinks of Cirrus, fearing this might be the end for him. As the training continues, Gerard notices something different. Lepenhard's body feels softer than usual. He begins to suspect that maybe Tezron truly has memory loss this time. After all, their martial sect, known as the Gym Unbreakable, is infamous for its intense and unforgiving training. Even Gerard himself admits he once lost his memory during the brutal routines. With a smirk, Gerard decides there's nothing to worry about and concludes the solution is simple: train harder. He intensifies the strikes, shouting that the more Tezron endures, the faster the memory loss will vanish. Lepenhard, trapped in Tezron's body, begs for help in his mind, while Gerard continues lecturing. He claims humans rely on weapons only because they are weak, calling armor and blades the tools of those too fragile to face their weaknesses. A true fighter, Gerard insists, must train their flaws and overcome them with nothing but their body. Lepenhard, however, finds himself baffled. After 50 years of life and knowledge, he thinks he has never heard anything so absurd. The bamboo stick Gerard was using breaks into pieces, and he explains that the human body is like iron. Just as iron becomes stronger the more it is hammered, so too does the body grow tougher through hardship. This reasoning makes Lepenhard angry because, to him, Gerard's explanation makes no sense. Gerard continues, saying he chose Tezron as his student because he believed in his potential. Not everyone can grow stronger through training alone, Gerard explains. Only the finest iron can turn into steel, and that is why he chose Tezron. Gerard keeps striking Lepenhard, who is now in Tezron's body, while telling him to think of the vast ocean, because the sea accepts everything yet remains unchanged. Gerard's intention is to make him awaken the limitless strength within, but to Lepenhard it all sounds like nonsense. Hearing about the ocean reminds him of Cirrus and the times they spent together at the beach, which makes him emotional. Seeing his tears, Gerard finally ends the training, ordering him to rest. Lepenhard collapses in exhaustion, relieved that he survived. Hugging himself, he silently thanks Tezron's powerful body for enduring the punishment. Later that night, while bathing, Lepenhard is astonished to see the tub filled with geril grass, and even healing potions. Knowing that each potion costs at least 10 silver coins, he is shocked that they used so many just for a bath. Staring at the water, he recalls stories of queens bathing in milk for their complexion, but compared to this, that seems modest. Curious, he asks Gerard why such a luxurious bath was prepared. Gerard explains that iron must be cooled after being hammered, and the same applies to the body. Lepenhard realizes their training method pushes every muscle and bone to the limit, then relies on aura and healing waters to recover quickly. By regenerating before the body breaks down, they make it tougher each time. Though still skeptical, Lepenhard admits it is not a completely baseless method. Having fought Tezron himself, he knows firsthand how incredibly resilient his body is. This means Tezron must have endured such training since his youth. Leaning back in the water, Lepenhard becomes certain that he has indeed traveled into the past. Yet he wonders what happened to the younger Lepenhard of this timeline. Could both versions of him exist at once? He considers two possibilities. Either the Leopard of the future now coexists with his younger self, or the young Leopard's body carries the soul of Tesron. After taking the medicinal bath, Gerard arrives with piles of meat and orders Leopard to eat it all, explaining that he needs to replenish his body with nutrients after pushing it to the limit. Leopard immediately begins eating, though reluctantly. Once the meal is finished, Gerard takes him jogging to work off the food. Leopard follows with a heavy backpack on his shoulders, but quickly grows exhausted. Seeing this, Gerard asks if the jogging is too much and suggests they return to morning training. But Leopard refuses and pushes himself forward, wondering how long he will have to endure this brutal regimen. Afterward, he collapses into bed, completely drained. Although he is now inside the body of young Tesron, the experience makes Leopard cry. He has no idea how this strange situation will affect the future, and more than anything, he wants to escape the mountain. He worries about what might happen if the two souls, his and Tesron's, ever cross paths. The uniqueness of each soul is, after all, an unbreakable law of the universe. If he is unlucky, both souls could be destroyed. He recalls that the younger version of himself won't begin his journey as a wizard for another 10 years, as he is likely still buried in books at the Delphia Magic Tower. That means the chance of meeting him is small. Still, there remains the possibility of Tesron taking over the young Leopard's body. If that happens, Leopard is certain Tesron would come after him. However, Tesron's true strength lies in his well-trained body, and the young Leopard's body would be far too weak to match it, unless Tesron could somehow become a 10-circle wizard. The Gym Unbreakable's training requires the guidance of a master, so it should be impossible to achieve alone. But Leopard also knows that Tesron is the kind of man who might find a way regardless. For now, Leopard decides his top priority is escaping the mountain. At midnight, he makes a run for it. But to his horror, Gerard is already waiting for him. The old master asks where he thinks he is going. Shocked, Leopard wonders how long Gerard has been sitting there. Gerard calmly explains that it has been months since Leopard first tried to escape, and this is now his 9th attempt, meaning he will soon hit double digits. Frustrated, Leopard blurts out the truth. He is not Tesron, but Leopard, a wizard. Gerard, however, doesn't believe him. He smirks, saying that Tesron has used all kinds of wild stories before, claiming he came from another world, met gods and dragons, or was the reincarnation of a martial arts master from the eastern continent. Leopard breaks into a sweat, realizing Tesron's past excuses ruined his credibility. Gerard pats his head, calling the latest story pretty convincing, but insists he return to bed. He drags Leopard back to his room, while Leopard silently vows to try again tomorrow. Every attempt fails. When Leopard tries sneaking through the bushes, Gerard is already there. When he tries escaping through the river, Gerard pulls him out again, assuring him that he understands how he feels, but urging him to endure the training a little longer, promising it will pay off. The man once feared as the Demon King, for his persistence, eventually gives up on escaping altogether. During training, Gerard explains the apprentice escape prevention method perfected over more than 130 years. Their clan is so strict that not a single student has avoided faking illness or attempting to run away, and yet none have ever succeeded. Leopard breaks into tears, realizing that even if he manages to escape, Gerard will hunt him to the ends of the earth. At this point, he thinks it may be easier to ask for permission to leave than to keep trying. Time passes, and 2 long years go by. Leopard endures the relentless training day after day, living what feels like a never-ending trial. Then, one day, Gerard finally congratulates him. After all the suffering, Leopard has awakened his aura. Leopard had heard that even stellar sword Cyrus, who was praised as a genius, did not awaken his aura until his late 20s. Yet somehow, Leopard managed to achieve it before turning 20. He was stunned by the sight of his newly awakened aura, but Gerard only laughed, asking why he looked so surprised when it was the natural outcome of Gym Unbreakable's training. Gerard had been striking him with a bat during training, but it no longer hurt. When physical training pushed Leopard's survival instincts to the edge, his will to live strengthened his vitality, and that power manifested as aura. Tossing the bat aside, Gerard declared it was time to move on to the next stage, skill training. Excited, Lepenhard thought this meant he would finally learn martial arts techniques and maybe even get the chance to leave the mountain. When he asked what kind of skill training it would be, Gerard laughed, revealed his own aura, and explained that it simply meant free sparring with him. Lepenhard fell silent at the thought, and so another 3 years passed. In the southern region of the Vasily Kingdom, deep within the rugged Rocked Mountain range, Lepenhard stood before a waterfall, powering up his fist with aura. He named the move Calamity Horn. Gathering mana into his fist, he struck the mountain wall, leaving a massive hole. He wondered if 3 layers of power were still his limit, since he felt he could reach higher with more training. Calamity Horn was a secret technique that channeled all of the body's power into a single devastating strike. The aura condensed in successive layers, forming what looked like a horn, hence the name. The ultimate form of the technique was 9 stacks, a strike said to be powerful enough to challenge even a deity. In his past life, Tesran had only managed 7 stacks, and Gerard himself had only reached 8. Gerard told him that he would not be allowed to leave the mountain until he could achieve at least 4 stacks. Standing on the cliff, Lepenhard muttered that since Gerard had gone down to the village, he would take his time and maybe even enjoy a drink. The old Lepenhard would have seen this as an opportunity to escape, but now he was different. Instead, he paused his physical skill training and tried casting a magic spell. He attempted Arrow Bullet and launched it toward a tree, but the result was disappointing. His body simply was not cooperating. Even though he retained all his magical knowledge thanks to the artifact Phantasmagoria, he questioned whether he could truly become a wizard while stuck in Tesran's body, which could not generate mana properly or handle complex calculations. While he was still practicing, Lepenhard suddenly sensed a presence nearby. It wasn't human. An orc emerged from the trees, equally surprised to see him. After realizing that the person in front of him is an orc, Lepenhard notes from his size that he must only be 3 or 4 years old. He wonders if the young orc has escaped from a battle arena, as he is still very young. Frustrated, the orc orders Lepenhard to pretend he didn't see him, promising not to harm him if he complies. From this, Lepenhard realizes the orc is actually trying to start a conversation, since he shows no hostility, even in tense situations. Lepenhard smiles and asks if the orc is being chased. Surprised, the orc asks how a human can speak the language of grace. Lepenhard replies that he learned it long ago from orcs he once knew. Relieved, the young orc admits that he is indeed being chased. Lepenhard offers to help and asks if he can be trusted. The orc answers that anyone who speaks the language of grace is like a brother to him, and he can sense Lepenhard's genuine goodwill. However, he warns that helping him will put Lepenhard in danger as well. From the orc's eloquence, Lepenhard suspects he is of noble blood. He reassures the young orc that he has the power to help and must trust him. Lepenhard then uses magic to conceal the hole he had created earlier during training and tells the orc to hide inside. Surprised, the orc asks if Lepenhard is a wizard. Lepenhard casually asks if that seems strange. The young orc replies that it does, since Lepenhard has such a strong physique, but he gratefully enters the cave and thanks him for his help. Almost immediately, a group of mercenaries in armor arrive, complaining about whether chasing a young orc is really worth a few silver coins. They approach Lepenhard and ask if he has seen an orc pass by, promising him 1 gold coin if he provides information. Among themselves, they whisper that they have no intention of paying and will trick him once they get the answer. Lepenhard calmly replies that he knows nothing. A tall man with long black hair points to the tracks nearby and accuses him of lying, noting that the footprints lead directly to him. Lepenhard then remembers that basic concealment magic does not hide tracks. Thinking quickly, he insists this is his residence and refuses them entry. Angered, the black-haired man calls him uncultured, while a brown-haired man notes that Lepenhard looks unusually strong. The leader, Bright, shouts for his men not to be intimidated, boasting that they outnumber him 10 to 1. He demands Lepenhard move aside. Realizing they won't leave peacefully, Lepenhard begins casting a spell, recalling Gerard's teaching, that his fists alone are deadly weapons, so he must show mercy to those weaker than him. To limit harm, he manifests a hammer-like weapon from his spell circle, reasoning that using a weapon is a more merciful option than striking with his bare fists. Holding the weapon, he warns the mercenaries that they won't die, though they may be badly beaten. The mercenaries grow enraged at his confidence and charge at him. Gritting his teeth, Lepenhard swings the weapon, sending several of them flying. Shocked, they regroup and decide to attack him all at once. The weapon technique he uses, the cudgel technique, is not truly meant for combat, but for training. It is designed to toughen the body by striking every part of an opponent relentlessly, with no defensive moves, only pure offense. As Lepenhard strikes down the attackers, a white-haired man sneaks behind him and strikes with the sword. To everyone's shock, the blade crumples on impact while Lepenhard remains unharmed. He looks at himself in disbelief, wondering how anyone can still call his body human when not even steel can pierce it. Though it is his body now, the reality still feels absurd. The remarkable thing about the cudgel technique is that it never kills opponents. Even if their joints are damaged, Lepenhard keeps attacking the mercenaries, thinking that this technique ensures they will survive. Soon, all of them are trembling and writhing in pain, leaving only Bright standing, his body shaking with fear. Pointing his sword at Lepenhard, Bright demands to know his identity. In response, Lepenhard uses the broken weapon and strikes him, reasoning that since all of Bright's companions are down, it wouldn't be fair for him to remain untouched. After being struck, Bright begs for his life. Lepenhard spares him and orders the mercenaries to leave the forest immediately. Though he wins easily, he feels unsatisfied, thinking the fight ended before it became truly interesting. He even wonders if he should take on students of his own one day to properly test his strength. Without realizing it, Lepenhard has already begun to think like a disciple of Jim Unbreakable. Once the mercenaries retreat, the young orc steps out from hiding and thanks Lepenhard, promising he will never forget this day and vowing to repay his debt no matter what. Lepenhard asks if a warrior should bow his head so easily. The orc responds that saving him and showing him a new path makes Lepenhard his mentor. In orc culture, a mentor is more than a teacher. It is a life guide, deeply respected, much like the loyalty knights show to their lords. He swears that when the time comes, he will gladly draw his sword for Lepenhard. The young orc then asks for his name. Lepenhard almost introduces himself as Tezron but hesitates, finally saying his true name, Lepenhard. The orc nods and promises to remember it. Curious, Lepenhard asks where he intends to go, knowing how limited an orc's options are in a world dominated by humans. The young orc replies that the continent is vast, and he is confident he can find a place to live. If not, he would rather wander freely than live as a slave. Moved by his words, Lepenhard suggests he head southeast, toward the wastelands of the Rocked Mountains. He explains that it is about a 2-week journey and is known among orcs as the Land of Trials. There, he will find the Blue Bear tribe, who are also in hiding. The young orc accepts the guidance, and after exchanging farewells, he begins running toward the direction Lepenhard pointed out. As he leaves, Lepenhard calls out, asking his name. The orc shouts back proudly that he is the son of Crota and bearer of Lat's axe, Tacit. Lepenhard is stunned. He realizes this young orc is none other than Tacit, who in his past life became one of the 4 great warrior kings. Tacit would go on to be the mighty chief of the Blue Bear tribe, and eventually rise as the head chief of all orcs. Lepenhard wonders if the original Tezron ever met young Tacit, and given Tezron's temperament, he doubts Tezron would have helped him. With a laugh, Lepenhard remarks that fate has taken a strange turn. Remembering the old days when the 4 warrior kings once joined his cause, he silently hopes he will once again meet the descendant of a fearless warrior. 6 months passed since that strange encounter with Tacit, and Lepenhard continued his training with Gerard. Gerard charged at him with a focused energy blast, frustrating Lepenhard, but he managed to block it in time using the spiral guard technique. After the exchange, Gerard stepped closer and remarked that Lepenhard had now mastered the spiral guard. He added that it felt like only yesterday when Lepenhard was still trying to convince him that he truly was Lepenhard, something Gerard once thought was just the result of too many beatings during training. Lepenhard asked why Gerard was suddenly bringing up that conversation again after 6 years. Gerard replied that it had nearly been 10 years since he began teaching him, and he had made great progress over the years. But then Gerard frowned and asked why Lepenhard was still short. Nervous, Lepenhard asked what he meant, since he stood over 170 centimeters. Gerard dismissed it as nonsense. insisting that any student of Gym Unbreakable should be at least 2 meters tall, since all fist masters were giants. He placed his hand on Lepenhardt's head and asked if he was using the breathing technique he had taught him. Hearing this, Lepenhardt recalled that in his past life, Tesron had grown to nearly 2.3 meters tall. He replied that his height was just due to his natural constitution, but inwardly he wondered if Gerard was insane. If he kept using the breathing technique, he might really end up becoming a giant. Gerard, however, shrugged it off, saying that it didn't matter as long as he was strong and sturdy. Later, Gerard took Lepenhardt near the waterfall to see the results of his training. There, Lepenhardt unleashed his power, leaping into the air to use the Calamity Horn technique. With 4 stacked layers of aura, he struck the ground, shattering the ice into countless pieces. Gerard laughed proudly at the sight and praised him, declaring that he would not be defeated by anyone. Lepenhardt, pleased with himself, was thrilled to have finally mastered the 4-stack Calamity Horn. Gerard then announced that it was time for Lepenhardt to go out into the world. Shocked, Lepenhardt hesitated, but Gerard encouraged him, saying he should live his life however his heart desired. Whether he chose the path of good or bad didn't matter. His reward for years of training was the freedom to live as he wished. Gerard then shared advice from 60 years ago, passed down to him by his master, Rastal, the 3rd king of fists. Rastal told him to always remember 3 things. First, it was fine to gather wealth, but never through unjust means. Young Gerard, puzzled, asked why he would say this when he had once told him it was fine to be a villain. Rastal explained that if he chose to be a villain, he should at least be a classy one with dignity. The second piece of advice was to always stand with those who had been wronged, as it was better to live a life worthy of praise. When Gerard asked if that meant he shouldn't side with the weak, Rastal explained that the weak are not always in the wrong, and besides, almost everyone was weaker than a student of Gym Unbreakable, so they could not be the judge of who was truly weak. Finally, the third and most important rule was to never let the legacy of Gym Unbreakable die. The scene shifted back to Gerard and Lepenhardt in the present. Gerard told him to find a student one day to pass on this great teaching. Lepenhardt agreed, promising to remember those words. Gerard then tossed him some money, advising that finding a gifted student would not be easy. He told him not to waste his life searching endlessly, but to make sure never to let such a student slip away once they appeared. Gerard packed some travel money and clothes for Lepenhardt. Seeing that it was only 30 silver coins, Lepenhardt complained that Gerard could have easily given more, since he was the wealthiest man in the Vasily kingdom. Although 30 silver coins was enough for half a year of living expenses for a commoner, Gerard explained that their martial sect had set a standard amount for departure funds. He added that back in his day, it had only been 25 coins. Gerard then told Lepenhardt he had left him a small gift hidden in the Seatlad mountain range, handing him a map with the location marked on it, and advised him to check it out if he ever passed by. Lepenhardt unfolded the map and prepared to finally leave the mountain, still wondering if he was truly free at last. Looking back at the snowy peaks, he felt a mix of relief and hesitation. Suddenly, Gerard released a surge of aura, startling him, and shouted for him to go. He told Lepenhardt not to let their farewell hold him back, reminding him to stay strong and move forward, because he was the successor of the greatest teacher in the world. Encouraged, Lepenhardt began running, the sound of Gerard's explosive aura echoing behind him. The scene then shifted to an inn in the city, where a black-haired man tried to stop an elderly man, the inn's chief, from confronting a group of armored knights. The old man, however, refused to back down, even knowing he was going against nobles, because he could no longer stay silent. Approaching a brown-haired knight, he demanded payment for the food and lodging consumed by him and his men during their stay. The knight smirked and tossed him a gold coin, thinking condescendingly that it was more than enough for commoners and mocking them in his mind. The old man caught the coin, examined it, and then called out again, saying that 1 gold coin was not nearly enough. Enraged, the knight shouted, accusing the old man of trying to scam him and claiming that he, as a noble, knew the market value better. In his arrogance, he struck the old man across the face. To the onlookers, however, it was clear, this knight was nothing more than a bandit in armor, a man who took over their homes, devoured their food, and then offered a single gold coin as if it covered everything. The old man, clutching his face, thought bitterly that the knight hadn't even considered transportation costs or labor. Just then, another man appeared and asked Edward, the knight, if there was any problem. Edward quickly replied to Stefan that everything was fine. But Stefan arrogantly stepped forward, belittling the old man and the townsfolk, sneering that they didn't know their place as commoners or when to stop. The scene shifts to the past, where Lepenhard is lying beside Cirrus after spending time with her. As Cirrus keeps touching his body, Lepenhard asks why, and she simply replies that it is because she likes it. Lepenhard, embarrassed, asks what she could possibly like about his skinny frame. With a gentle smile, answers that his body is elegant and sharp, like a well-honed blade. That was how Lepenhard's body once was, but now, he feels it has become more like that of a terrifying stone golem. The thought makes him cry as he apologizes to Cirrus. Yet, part of him feels relieved, thinking that at least he is growing taller. Looking out the window, he reflects that Cirrus, if alive now, would be over 70 years old, around the equivalent of 17 in human years. Currently, Lepenhard is in Chrome City, in the southern region of the Vasily Kingdom. He knows that around next year, Cirrus will be sold at a slave auction in the Chotin Kingdom. He wonders if he should destroy the auction house to save her, but decides against it. If things spiral out of control, it will interfere with his goal of regaining his magic. Instead, he believes the best solution is to buy her freedom. Unfortunately, elf slaves are unimaginably expensive, and Lepenhard is flat broke. Still, he reassures himself that he now has a powerful body, honed skills, and even the memories of the future. Thinking along those lines, Lepenhard recalls ruins on the road to the Chotin Kingdom. The scene then shifts to Wizard Todd casting detection magic. Stefan asks if Todd has located the ruins yet, but Todd tells him to wait a little longer. Todd, a 35-year-old ruins exploration specialist and a wizard of the Delphia Magic Tower, finally confirms the location. Stefan asks if he is certain, and Todd replies that this is indeed the resting place of the great swordsman, Claude von Leodas Altion. Meanwhile, 3 days have passed since Lepenhard left Chrome City. He travels north along the central road toward the Hatton Mountain Range. Along the way, he praises Tessrin's body, noting its endless stamina and resistance to the cold. He recalls how previous kings of Fist were known to walk shirtless even in winter, though he has no intention of doing the same. Using the artificial phantasmagoria technique, which allows him to recall memories whenever he wishes, Lepenhard reviews what he knows about the ruins in the Hatton Mountains. In his past life, while studying at the Delphia Tower, he had met Todd. Back then, Todd mentioned he would one day explore those ruins with someone from House Altion. Lepenhard remembers clearly that it was around this time. He also recalls that in the past, when he himself went to the ruins, he discovered a hidden artifact underground, one that Todd and his team completely missed. He smirks at the memory of selling everything he found there, earning over 2,000 gold coins. It had been a very profitable discovery. Soon, Lepenhard arrives at a cliff overlooking Cattle Village, which looks exactly as he remembers. The scene shifts again to the village, where the chief and several villagers are in the middle of a difficult discussion. They are being forced to provide a guide to the knights, who insist on heading into the Valley of Death, a place the villagers desperately want to avoid. Refusal would bring trouble, but compliance could cost lives. The chief tries to stand firm, but the knights threaten him. A black-haired man curses their situation, but a brown-haired man warns him to lower his voice before the knights overhear. Seeing no other option, a red-haired man named Ted steps forward, offering to go with the knights. Ted, the best mountain climber in the village, is the only one capable of making such a journey. His wife and child cry at his decision, but the villagers pressure him, insisting he cannot back out now. Reluctantly, Ted prepares himself, though he clearly doesn't want to go. At that moment, Lepenhard, who had been watching quietly from outside, presses his face against the window and interrupts, saying that he can go in Ted's place. Shocked, Ted raises his bow at him, demanding to know his identity. Lepenhard calmly explains that he is just a traveler passing through who happened to overhear their conversation. Suspicious, Ted questions if it was truly an accident, since no one accidentally ends up with their head under someone else's window. They allowed Lepenhard inside the house, but everyone was frightened by his towering figure. One of them nervously asked if he knew the area well, and Lepenhard confirmed that he did. They asked again if he was truly willing to go to the Valley of Death. Lepenhard calmly replied that he had been there before, so it would be fine. The brown-haired man explained that no one had ever returned alive from that place, and asked once more if Lepenhard still wished to go. Lepenhard interrupted, repeating that he had already been there, while thinking to himself that they should consider themselves lucky, since he had just saved one of their men's lives. The Valley of Death was also known as a dungeon, a remnant of the Silver Age, a long-forgotten ancient past. 50 years earlier, there was a knight named Claude from House Altion. He awakened his aura at the young age of 45 and lived a life of countless adventures, his heroic tales spreading throughout the Vasily kingdom. But when fame grows too great, people often forget their limits. Claude charged into the Valley of Death with only a single servant and perished. His family's treasured weapon, the demon sword Altion, was lost in those ruins. The sword was the symbol of House Altion, passed down for generations. For 50 years, the family tried to recover it. Now, Stefan, a descendant of House Altion, was heading toward the dungeon with Lepenhard and a group of knights. Lepenhard suspected that Stefan might even be Claude's grandson. As the journey continued, Lepenhard noticed Stefan and an elf interacting closely, almost playfully. He wondered why a Slayer elf was traveling beside Stefan and why they seemed so comfortable together. Their party also had only one priest, Salon, whose striking beauty made Lepenhard question whether he could truly cast proper holy spells. To his surprise, Salon was actually a man. Lepenhard wanted to approach Todd, hoping to come up with an excuse to talk since it had been so long. In the past, when Todd was a young wizard, he used to chat with him in the same lively way. But something felt different this time, like Todd's attention was directed towards Salon. The thought made Lepenhard uneasy, sweating as he tried to convince himself that Todd wasn't that kind of person. Meanwhile, Edward told Lepenhard that he had made the right choice by joining them. Lepenhard brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal. Edward remarked that none of the villagers had dared to volunteer. Lepenhard replied that it was only natural for them to be afraid, but Edward insisted there was no reason to fear the dungeon since they were accompanied by the bravest knights in the kingdom. That arrogance irritated Lepenhard. To him, knights always seemed to be arrogant fools, their so-called chivalry only breeding more narcissists. Suddenly, a scream echoed from the mountains. Dozens of white-furred monsters charged at their party. Edward quickly ordered the knights to form defensive positions against the ambush. The Slayer elf and Stefan drew their weapons, and Stefan shouted that the monsters had dared to attack humans blessed by Sayer. He ordered his knights to strike back. Todd unleashed fire chain magic against the creatures, while Celon cast holy spells to strengthen the knights. Their coordination impressed Lepenhard. They were more capable than he had expected, especially Stefan, whose swordsmanship was sharper than anticipated. But from a fighter's perspective, their movements still seemed sloppy. It was no wonder Gerard always took pride in the training of Jim Unbreakable. Amid the battle, Lepenhard noticed a traveler under attack by one of the flying white-furred monsters. As the beast swooped down, Lepenhard stepped in, delivering a powerful punch to stop it, all while wondering why no one else was watching out for the helpless traveler. According to Todd's account, this was the place where their guide, Ted, had died at the hands of the white-furred monsters. The leader of the party, Stefan of the Altion family, fought alongside the knights. He wasn't an entirely bad person, but he never looked out for the people around him, which, to Lepenhard, was the very definition of a bad person. It was no surprise to him that their guide had died under Stefan's leadership. During the battle, Celon urged Lepenhard to hide behind a tree because it was dangerous. This made Lepenhard think that Celon might be the only decent one among them. A white-furred monster lunged at Lepenhard. He defeated the beast instantly, wondering if he still had unshed tears left from his years of harsh training. The orc-like monsters around them grew frightened after witnessing this. Once the battle ended, Stefan ordered Edward to report the damage and check if the wizard and priest were safe. Edward confirmed they were. Annoyed, Lepenhard asked if they didn't care about anyone else's safety. Stefan ignored him and proudly announced to the surviving knights that the Altion order was strong, telling them to enjoy their victory and rest. Seeing an opportunity, Leppenhard approached Todd to thank him for saving his life. Todd coldly replied that it was simply his duty. Leppenhard pressed further, saying he had overheard that Todd was from the Delphia Tower and mentioned that he had a friend there as well. Curious, Todd asked about the friend's name. Leppenhard, suppressing a smirk, said his friend's name was Leppenhard and asked if Todd knew him. Todd confirmed that he did, but jokingly added that he didn't know Leppenhard had such a rugged-looking companion. Todd's expression then shifted uncomfortably as he remarked on Leppenhard's sweet and graceful appearance. The comment unsettled Leppenhard. When Todd asked why he wanted to know, Leppenhard explained that he was simply curious about how his friend was doing and if everything was all right. Todd replied that Leppenhard was studying magic as usual, with nothing unusual going on. While they were talking, Ceylon interrupted to ask if Leppenhard was hurt. Leppenhard replied that he was fine and told Ceylon to check on the orcs instead. Ceylon went to heal them, even though the orcs insisted they weren't badly injured. Some knights sneered at the sight, telling Ceylon to stop wasting his power and let the orcs tend to themselves. Watching, Leppenhard noted that although Ceylon treated the orcs kindly, the real issue, he realized, was the fundamental prejudice in people's values. Securing equal rights for non-human races would be a long and difficult struggle. Leppenhard's irritation grew as Stefan arrogantly told him to start guiding. Giving them directions, he casually instructed them to proceed with strength and then turn left toward a stream. Suspicious, Stefan asked why he was using such a strange tone, but Leppenhard brushed it off. Hours later, all the knights were exhausted from fighting endless monsters in the forest. The truth was that Leppenhard had deliberately avoided the proper path, guiding them in a straight line to wear them down. When they grew tired, he manipulated Stefan again, insisting they didn't need to rest. Stefan took the bait and forced everyone to continue. To Leppenhard, it was all fair play. Knights were arrogant, priests were stubborn, and wizards were narrow-minded. And as a wizard at heart, he convinced himself that he hadn't tricked them at all. He had simply guided them along the quickest route. While walking, Stefan remarked that he finally understood why Claude had died in the mountains. No one would have imagined that such a small mountain could be swarming with so many monsters. From the cliff, they eventually spotted the ancient ruins of Fulton and made their way down toward it. After reaching the entrance, they found the doors already open. Assuming it was safe to enter, Stefan ordered the knights to prepare themselves. Leppenhard told Stefan that he would wait outside, but Stefan insisted that his job was done and that he should go back. Leppenhard pointed out that there was no way he could return to the village on his own. Hearing this, Stefan reluctantly agreed, saying that since Leppenhard had guided them, they would protect him on the journey back. Leppenhard grew angry, realizing they had not intended to help him in the first place. Stefan then rallied the knights, boosting their morale by reminding them of their mission to find the demon sword Altion. With loud cheers, the knights charged into the dungeon, while Leppenhard simply waved them off. Once they were gone, he decided it was time to focus on his true goal. The ancient ruins of Fulton, now infested with monsters and restless souls, had originally been a military outpost built during the Silver Age. Though it was an ordinary structure by design, the technology of that era was far beyond the standards of the present day, making it a place of incredible value. Entering the dungeon, Leppenhard felt a wave of nostalgia, remembering his adventures with Cirrus. Focusing, Leppenhard examined the hidden passage. He remembered that the lock was coated with Libra's pattern, mixed with the reversed symbols of Aqua and Terra. He knew how to solve it, but without his old magical strength, the process was more difficult than expected. His body was stronger now, but his mind was not as sharp as it once had been. Still, after effort, he managed to cast the spell and open the passage. Before entering, Leppenhard removed his shirt, not wanting to ruin something that had cost 10 silver coins. He flexed briefly, checking his physical condition, when suddenly a scream echoed from the opposite side of the dungeon. He immediately remembered that the hidden passage connected directly to the third basement floor. If the stairs had opened, it meant there had been some kind of intrusion there. Leppenhard reminded himself that no matter how ruined it seemed, Fulton was still a military facility. Its magical defense systems would activate to fight off intruders. In the past, when it was just him and Cirrus, they hadn't needed to worry about the other areas. But now, with the Altion party inside, It was likely they had triggered a trap and ended up falling together to the second basement floor. The realization made him break into a sweat. This had turned into a complete mess. The scene then shifted to Stefan, Ceylon, and the knights battling against a terrifying monster with glowing red eyes. The moment Stefan sensed its aura, he realized the truth. There was no way they could defeat it. Worse still, there were many of these creatures. No human force could possibly fight against such overwhelming numbers of demon-like monsters.